Okay, everyone, we're going to call this meeting in order. This is going to follow the same guidelines as a city council meeting. It is a city council meeting. So we're going to call it together at, it's roughly 5:30, 5:32 on April 22nd. I want to go over some of the ground rules first. As everybody knows, we're going to conduct this, and we've had great meetings before with lots of questions, but we do have marshals and PD here. And if somebody gets out of order, we will probably give one warning, if not ask them to leave immediately. I don't anticipate to be that a problem. It's never been a problem in 9 years. Number two, I think we set this for 300 people tonight, and it looks like it's going to be full. And the order of the presentation tonight will be Aaron Vanoy will get up and talk about some zoning. He's going to have roughly 30-something slides that I think covers. We're having an argument within staff. We think it's going to cover nearly 80% of the questions that come out as far as guidelines. And I would say protection and what we want to see that protects the neighborhood. After that, I will get up and do a discussion with two gentlemen here from Emergent Skybox. After that concludes, we will move into public comment, which will be handled the exact same way as we do at council. You'll be allowed 3 minutes to talk at public comment. There'll be no rebuttal from council. And at the end of that, I will say a couple of the people here from Skybox and Emergent have said, when the meeting's over, we're not in any hurry to run away. If somebody has some questions, it won't be done from the stage, but they're not going to run out and hide if somebody has something they want to ask. So it just depends how deep and how long public comment goes. If somebody wants that opportunity, keep that in mind. Another thing I want to point out, and if you haven't seen this already, there's been a petition submitted for my recall as mayor. I just think everybody needs to know that one up front. Anyway, that one's out there. I think I got notified of it yesterday at 5 o'clock, so that's out. But with that, I want to go ahead and bring up Aaron Vanoy. And Aaron heads up our planning and development services, the whole thing that we're going to talk about. And y'all have seen Aaron lots of times. So let's give Aaron a hand and turn it over to him.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mayor, City Council. We're going to go over the zoning items that we've come up for what some people call protections, restrictions, regulations, but items within our zoning ordinance that we're proposing to City Council to adopt as our ordinances for data centers within the city limits. So in our current process, in our current ordinance, we do not have any restrictions for data centers. We heard from the citizens that they would like to have some say in what goes on. So in the zoning ordinance, the process to do that is through a conditional use. That's what the process we've come up with. We do conditional uses for lots of different things, from short-term rentals to household living in commercial places and things like that. So we are proposing to our city council a conditional use process that would allow data centers in the light manufacturing and the heavy manufacturing areas. And I've got a couple of slides to show you where the majority of those are within our city. They would follow Section 208 of our current zoning ordinance, which is the section for conditional uses on how someone would apply, the process for review, and the process for Planning Commission to go through. That is a public meeting that does get public notice for those items. And that means the public can come and comment on those items at the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission has the option to approve or deny. If they approve, we have some regulations, design guidelines that we have within our zoning ordinance that we're going to ask to adopt that they would need to follow. If they get denied, it could be appealed to City Council, and then City Council gets to make that decision. There is also processes that, through the conditional uses, that other folks can appeal that process and take it to City Council for an ultimate vote. So here we have some maps. On these maps, if you look at the blue and the light blue areas, those are the light manufacturing and the heavy manufacturing areas. This is kind of the northeast portion of town where 67 comes in and 277 comes in and joins in right there. It goes by Howard College. splits off to 306 that goes to the south to 87, and then splits also here and comes along as Houston Hart Freeway. One of the things that I want y'all to notice is that along our railroad, you can see lots of properties are usually zoned light manufacturing and heavy manufacturing along our railroads, as well as our major transportation areas, because that's where things are produced, they're shipped out or shipped in, and so that's usually where light manufacturing, heavy manufacturing are. You see the greens and the yellows, those are residential areas. Oranges are residential, and then when you get to the pinks and the reds, those are commercial or heavy commercial areas. Here's kind of the north section. Again, you have Bryant that comes in here, so a major corridor comes in through here, comes in. There are some areas. There's, our steel works that happen right in this area that are along the spur line and the railroad. And of course, down here just north of downtown, you can start seeing the area that is along the railroad and the highway that has some manufacturing areas. If you look south of downtown, again, you see that rail line that kind of goes right through the middle. Lots of areas of manufacturing around there. And then, of course, as our evolution of our city has grown and we gained Goodfellow Air Force Base in this area below and a major thoroughfare with Chadburn coming out this way, again, areas of manufacturing start to grow. And then our far south part of town where Christoval Road and the interchange is there before 277 heads south, you can see some more light manufacturing. So those blue areas are the areas that a data center as a primary land use could apply for a conditional use, asking the city, can we put a data center there? They have to ask. All the other colors that are there, they are not allowed by right. That would be our proposal to City Council. Also, with our proposal, with our definitions, we are asking that there would be no cryptocurrency mining allowed with a data center use. We would allow accessory uses because we have data centers in town right now that are, lots of facilities use them, from our hospitals, offices, campuses. There are data centers in town. Data centers have been around for 40 plus years and been around in San Angelo for that long. But we're talking about very large primary land uses that's just a data center. Those are the ones that we would choose to regulate or have rules for in our community. We have some rules for generator yards, the equipment, the fuel tanks, the associated equipment, and also what does it mean to have a private utility. If they needed secondary power, we would have rules on how they would be able to accomplish that private utility that's not a public utility that's owned by a political subdivision like the city water department. That's a political subdivision. This would be where they would be able to own their own types of utilities on their properties. When it comes to the conditional use application process, we've gone through and we've looked at ordinances from all over the country, from Virginia to many cities within the state of Texas. There's about 5 ordinances in the state of Texas that deal with data centers. And we tried to pull the things that what we heard from citizens, from consultants, from other city folks that we've talked to around the state. What is it that concerns your citizen and concerns you that we need some kind of protection for? So when they submit this conditional use, they have to give these plans to the city to put in the packet so that planning commissioners and the public can see those things. It comes with what we normally call a site plan, but it's something that has the building location with all the setbacks. Ground mounted equipment, so those generators and fuel tanks, where are they going to be located on site? Parking, driveways, that traffic circulation in and around the facility. If there's needed to be sidewalks or pedestrian routes, where are those going to be? A traffic impact analysis, both during construction and after they get operating. We know that data centers, large data centers, they operate different when they're under construction, and then once they turn over to operation, they operate slightly different. Fencing, landscaping, screening, how are we doing those protections of vision, heat, noise, those types of things, and fencing, landscaping, screening are part of those. Lights and photometric items. If they have large lights that are high up above, how does that light spill off of their property? A sound study, and we'll get more into that in depth in just a little bit. Building elevations and materials and signage. So there's a lot of things that they have to turn into us for an application before they can actually get going with any kind of development process. So here's some of the more specifics. So within our ordinance, we talk about a building height, maximum height of 75 feet. If it's greater than 50 feet, every story they go above, then they have to go 10 feet back from the property line. So the standard setback is 50 feet from the property line. But again, they have a maximum height of 75 feet. So they could be even a little bit further back if they chose to go to that maximum height. If you have accessory structures like generators and things like that, or maybe an office building, whatever it may be, then they can be as close as 30 feet to the property line, depending on what type of equipment it is. If it's a noise-making equipment like a generator, we may have some things to ask them to say, hey, we want to move that to a different location. Setbacks between different land uses and zoning. It was very clear that through our planning commission and citizens that we wanted to protect our neighborhoods inside and outside of the city limits. So we had proposed some different distances. This is a compromise that we had come up to. 200 feet setback from any property line that's adjacent to a residential use or a residence of any kind. So even if it's farmland and there's a farmhouse out there, they've got to be 200 feet on their side of the property before they can build any kind of structure. So that's a 200-foot buffer around a property. So if you look at this site here, and for scale, this is a very large site. If you that property line on the right, that's over 7,000 linear feet. The property line along, this is Highway 67 is the gray line. Along Highway 67, that's over 5,200 linear feet. So a very large site, 350 plus acres. You can just see, it's a lot easier up here where there's not the background information, but that's 200 feet buffer between that red property line and where they could start building a structure if these rules are implemented through our city council. You can see that goes all the way on this perimeter of this as if this was all residential around them. So that's how that would work for there. On a commercial property, we would lower that down to 50 feet if it's commercial or industrial, because those are very similar uses that they could be closer together. There's also buffers created by streets, driveways, and parking, as well as landscaping. So again, the commercial setback is 50 feet. Ground-mounted equipment that's adjacent to residential property, we're asking for that same 200 feet. So you've got 200 feet of buffering between there. If there's another, say there's a local street, we're asking that there's at least a 25-foot landscape buffer in there before they start having things that are part of their property going on. If it's an arterial or collector, that's a classification of roads, so Highway 67 is an arterial. They would have to be at least 40 feet back with a 40-foot landscape area. And if they just have pavement on the side or the rear yards, it would be 15 feet back from the property line. Here's just another sample site. This is off of FM 380. We envisioned this one just because we know the zoning right here is light manufacturing. This is also light manufacturing. This is in the ETJ, which means it's outside the city limits. And so we did a 50-foot buffer, a 50-foot buffer, a 50-foot buffer, and then a 200-foot buffer. And that would be their area in which they could build something. So that's, again, looking at large sites. How do these sites get constructed? What are those buffers and things like that? So we try to do just a sample one. Again, you see that building in the middle. You see a parking lot. You see a roadway. You see the setbacks. Now envision all of this area that would have some kind of required landscaping, whether that's trees, shrubs, or natural habitat that we have in West Texas that sometimes can be even more dense than just trees and shrubs as you go along. But that, again, is to help mitigate some of those issues that could be presented from heat, noise, sight, sound, all of those types of things. Landscaping became very important to us as we were looking at this, and people think landscaping of just as aesthetics. How does it look? While there is something about how do we protect one of our major corridors, if it's on 67, how does that look for people coming to San Angelo? We also know that there's lots of other benefits to landscaping, from erosion control, stormwater runoff, to cooling islands in big parking lots and along large buildings, to breaking up the sight line as you're driving by and you're picking up the landscape instead of a large building. We know that through lots of different studies from many, many years, it improves air quality, reduces heat, helps prevent flooding, also helps block wind and provide shade. And it's that phytoremediation which also helps the soil from different toxins. There's a reason why certain plants do very, very well with that. And trees function as a sound barrier. So in one of our examples within our ordinance that we're proposing is a 40-foot landscape buffer. You can see on there are mature trees, which are the large circles. Then there are smaller trees that are the smaller circles that are shrubs. And 40 feet, you can start getting this kind of clustering of trees. So there's just not a big long line of trees and you just drive by and you just see tree. You start getting a clustering of the different trees. If you do a 25-foot separation, they start to spread out a little bit more, or they become more linear, because the 25 feet and a mature tree, you don't have as much canopy space as you would in other areas. And again, you can see with the medium trees, you can still cluster those. And then on a 15-foot wide buffer, again, it's going to be fairly linear. You're going to have so many trees, so many feet apart, and you would probably plant those in to keep that buffer line through there. So in town, do we have anything like that? Well, we do out at the Chaparral Park out on 67 already. You can see that these live oaks here, you can see 67 behind them, the new portion that they've built, that TxDOT built in the last few years. Still fairly high speeds through there that drops down to 65 miles an hour. These trees are over 50 feet apart, and they're also over right at 40 feet from the paving surface. And you can see that they have this nice linear shape going through there. You're picking those trees up as you're driving through. It's blocking some of the noise and things that would be coming from either the street onto that property or even from the property going off to the street. And you can just see in there, they have some clustered small things from yuccas to pampas grass and some other things in there to break up just that linear look of the landscape. This is along one of their side streets, a minor street, just a regular street, not a highway. Again, those trees are spread out a little bit further. But looking at our West Texas landscape, live oaks do fairly well once they get established. Once they get established, they are a dense cover, they're evergreen, and they help provide protection year-round. So again, not just do we require landscaping, we also gave them the option of creating a natural buffer zone of 40 feet if they didn't want to plant trees, that we're going to have a 40-foot buffer zone. And so you go back to that first one that had a very wide area here where this is a 40-foot buffer zone, but now think of that as all natural habitat with some live oaks that are natural, with mesquite trees that might be natural, from the other plants and density that you can get with some of those plants in our natural state. Now, if you're planting in a cotton field or a wheat field, you're going to have to do the landscaping. But if you're going to a site that's got a mesquite pasture, that's got mature mesquites, this might be an option for them. Other items that we're including into the ordinance is making sure that they have enough parking spaces, but not an overage of parking spaces, not a sea of parking spaces. Because once they get into operation, they're not going to have thousands of employees. They may have 100 employees or so. It just depends on the data center, the size, and what's going on. But we don't need all that parking creating stormwater runoff once they're done. Again, ground-mounted equipment, generators, things, those must be screened with masonry walls. Rooftop equipment must be visually screened. Fencing can be masonry, wrought iron, or black PVC coated. And again, it needs to be along the street frontage, could be masonry or wrought iron. Excuse me. If it's not along the frontage, it could go to that PVC coated, depending on how far it is. And you think about the linear distance of 7,000 feet on that first one of those images I showed you. That's a lot of fencing. That's over a mile of fencing to put on one property side if they chose to. Fencing is going to be up to the discretion of the Planning Commission. If it's against residential areas, they're going to want an opaque fence potentially. If it's along industrial or other commercial areas, it may not need to be an opaque fence, and they may be able to fill in with the landscaping. If they have super parking lots, we're going to ask for landscape islands to create some shade islands. And then any lighting that's on the property is going to be shielded, pointed downwards, excuse me, not to exceed 30 feet in height. And then the lighting on the building is to be not at such a super height. If you've got a 50-foot building, you don't need to have lights up at 50 feet to shine down on the walkways. You need that lighting to come down so it reduces the light spillover. We've also placed, and it was requested through, I think, at one of our educational meetings with City Council about requiring the lumens to be set at a dark sky lumens, and so that's in there as well. Noise. Currently, we're going to request noise to be kind of at 2 different decibels, a daytime and nighttime. It could be that that's changed to just 1 decibel across the board. But the maximum sound levels that we would request is 60 decibels at daytime, and that's measured at the property line. And I found just a 60 decibel is roughly equivalent to a normal conversation or typical background noises in an office, a restaurant, or a quiet suburban neighborhood. At nighttime, when most of us are probably getting ready to go to bed or in bed, we want it just a little bit quieter. Again, 55 decibels, while that number doesn't look that much, but when you're dealing with decibels, that can be a significant difference. 55 is considered moderate and generally comfortable, similar to a quiet office, a humming refrigerator, or a moderate rainfall. And again, these are measured at the property lines. There was citizen concerns about the low frequency or humming noises, and so we have this proposed in our ordinance that there's some different octave bands and frequencies and things like that. And a lot of the times that we see this, we've never seen this at data centers, but the research shows that there are some times, whether it's a large generator, power generator, and the electrical engine has got a certain tune to it, they can come in and retune that engine just a little bit and bring that vibration down. Again, these low hums and vibrations on this scale would not be able to pass beyond the property line. And then this is our last slide for our zoning ordinance, and then I'm going to transition into a couple of other things. Zoning is not the best place to regulate water and wastewater. In fact, the state of Texas, under Code 212, doesn't mention water specifically, but it does not say that we can regulate it in zoning. So we have adopted many years ago utility ordinances, and that's where we're going to regulate water consumption and wastewater discharges, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But we are asking to add into our zoning ordinance to add these 2 clauses that would say, hey, don't forget, you need to follow our utility ordinance as well. Because most development starts with zoning, then site development. They come to our ordinances and said, all right, what's the zoning? And they look at this and they say, oh, I need to follow that also. So that's why we're asking for that to be there. So now we're going to transition out of the zoning ordinance into the utility ordinance. So again, the utility ordinance, if you're looking at it, it's chapter 11 in our code of ordinances. And we will have all this stuff online for you to look up as well. So in the utility ordinance, we're proposing to add this for purposes of this article. We would use the same data center definitions in the zoning ordinance into the utility ordinance. So it's like for like. So there's no confusion. We would also add that all data center facilities shall employ closed-loop cooling systems or similar cooling technology which minimizes water use and eliminates the need for continuous withdrawals from the city's public water supply for heat rejection. So their cooling system has to be something that is closed, has to be something that minimizes the water use so that they're not continually drawing large volumes of water. And then we get even a little more specific, and this is a very heavy slide, but I'm going to read through the whole thing for you. So when it talks about the cooling water allowances, and we're talking about the initial fill, this is exact wording from the ordinance. The initial cooling system fill shall not exceed 15 gallons per square foot of gross building area, as defined in the approved building permit for each data center building. Initial fill shall occur within the 12 months of the building receiving a certificate of occupancy. So they get a certificate of occupancy. They can fill it up to 15 gallons per square foot of gross building floor area, and they have 12 months to do that, to operate it. If they have a scheduled maintenance refill, they can fill the cooling system, the full, excuse me, I'm going to take a drink of water for just a second. Sorry about that. So the full cooling system drain and refill, not to exceed the initial fill volume, may occur for each data center building at intervals no more frequent than once every 3 years. Operator shall provide the city utilities director with 30 days written notice of when this is going to be scheduled, and the draining shall comply with all TCEQ requirements and other applicable law. The annual makeup water, so on an annual basis, routine cooling system makeup water, to replace minor losses from valve packing, gasket weepage, maintenance drains, those type of things, shall not exceed 3% of the total installed cooling loop volume per data center building per calendar year. So that's the restrictions that we're proposing for water usage from the city's water supply. Additional exempt water uses, these would be things that if bad things happen, we want them to use water. So fire suppression system fill, we want them to fill that up. During the construction phase, we want them to use water for dust control, so that mitigates some issues, as well as for concrete curing and hydrostatic testing. So while they're doing their foundations and their tilt walls, that they're able to utilize water for that. Site landscaping, but it's limited to drought-tolerant xeriscape plantings that's consistent with the city's water conservation plan, and they would be required to use drought-resistant plantings. And they could use reclaimed or recycled water obtained from the city's reclaimed water system when available for any of those purposes. So they might be able to utilize reclaimed water, not just the fresh water. And the last thing that we have for water consumption is if they exceed what happens in that first section. So if you have, first they have to notify 48 hours of an event to the water utilities director. Why did it happen? What was the cause? What was the volume? What was the duration? How much water are we talking about here that's gone that now we have to refill? The approval to refill comes down to the city manager or their designee, and they have 5 days to approve or deny. They look at our water situation and say, all right, what is the best situation for the city of San Angelo at this time? Do we approve them using additional water, or do we deny them using additional water? There is an emergency exception, as if there's imminent risk to facility equipment or personnel, and then they need to document and notify the city within 72 hours of that incident. More than likely, some of our city team is going to be responding to those imminent dangers, and so that's probably going to be known and passed on very, very quickly. So those are what we're proposing in the water utilities area for the water systems, for using water. Now I'm going to go over a couple of slides that talk about the wastewater or the sewage that comes from the facility. So currently, in our wastewater or sewage water systems ordinance, there are currently prohibited discharges, and this is kind of the first paragraph, that no person may discharge to public sewers any waste which by itself or by interaction with other waste may injure or interfere with wastewater treatment processes or facilities, constitute a hazard to humans or animals, create a hazard in the receiving waters or irrigation acreage of the wastewater treatment plant effluent. So those are the generic kind of statements of, all right, you can't cause us harm by what you put back in our sewer system, what you discharge back out. Also currently prohibited in our discharges, and if you go to this, again, this is Chapter 11, our water utilities or our utilities ordinance, chemical discharges, and there's a long list of chemicals there that are listed that says you cannot discharge these. They have to be at a certain rate or not at all. Heavy metals and toxic materials, again, at a certain rate or not at all. Garbage. It surprised me as I was reading through it, you just can't put garbage down the sewer line. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Radioactive waste, you can't put that in the sewer line either. These are already in our ordinances. High temperature discharges, when you get over 150 degrees Fahrenheit and you start pushing those things down the sewer line, you start having real issues and problems. And then also stormwater and other unpolluted drainage going into the sewer system that overloads the sewer system and may cause it to spill out. Those things are already in our utility ordinance today. What we're proposing to add for data center specific, a discharge event means any intentional release of treated cooling fluid to the sanitary sewer system. A planned discharge event means an intentional release associated with a scheduled maintenance, loop replacement, or repair activity. An emergency discharge event means an unplanned release caused by equipment failure, system rupture, or safety-related incident. Sampling and laboratory verification of treated discharge must be completed prior to each discharge event. Records of the discharge volumes, analytical results, and discharge dates must be maintained for at least 3 years and provided to the Director of Water Utilities upon request. Planned discharge events required written notification to the Water Utilities Director at least 72 hours prior to discharge so that he can send his teams, let's go check, are they doing everything correct? Are they protecting our system? Are they protecting our citizens? 4, emergency discharges events must be reported to the Director of Water Utilities within 4 hours of the occurrence, and a written incident report must be submitted within 7 days detailing the discharge volume, analytical results, and corrective actions taken. And the Director of Water Utilities retains the authority to establish discharge flow limits and additional operation requirements necessary to protect the city's sanitary sewer infrastructure and ensure compliance with applicable industrial pretreatment standards. So we do have a lot of industrial sites around our community, and we already have rules for those industrial sites. We're proposing these 5 things for data center specific. And so I've gone through a lot of slides and a lot of information, and I know our city council's been listening over here to our right. I'm not sure that there's any questions from city council at this moment today, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. If not, we'll move to the next item on the agenda. Okay. Well, with that, Mayor, I think we'll move on to the next item on the agenda and let y'all take it from there. Thank you, everyone.
Or do you have the clicker? Can I use the clicker?
You want a clicker? Sure. That's yours.
It's like,
That's yours. Thank you. That's you.
cool. Like the big arrow goes forward. Put a mock check.
Check, check. Work.
Get over here.
We can pass it back and forth.
Sure. Yeah. So at this point in time, the thing that I've been excited about for a long time, I guess it's been over a year that we've been working on this project, is to bring these two gentlemen up here to answer your questions. There were some benchmarks and there were some milestones that the city needed to achieve before we got to this process. There were several things that happened up to this date that would have changed had we brought them sooner, wouldn't bring us to the point we are today to ask the questions we want. All right, so what I'm going to be doing now is we're going to cover some questions that were submitted. Every question that was submitted from the, I believe it was the 8th through the 17th of April, is answered. And we're going to make that website live to you here in a little bit. And I mean every question. If they did not submit a question, it didn't get answered. So I don't know, they had 10 days to submit questions. If you didn't answer one, we'll try to get that addressed in the future. We took the top 7 or 8 questions and try to build a summary of what those are. And we're going to answer those here tonight. And when we get done, we'll flip on the website and everybody can go find their question. If it's not exactly how you submitted it, please understand we had to summarize it. If there were questions that were, I would say, something we couldn't give a very factual answer to, a yes, no, we didn't answer those. And I think y'all understand that. Sometimes people put out something that's real open-ended in an attempt to box you in a corner. We don't want to box anybody in a corner, but we wanted to at least answer everything we could. And as always, the entire council and myself are very approachable. Talk with your councilman if there's something you've seen that hadn't gone forward. But right now, I want to introduce to you the two people up here on the stage, and I'm going to start with CEO Chris Sumter of Skybox Emergent. And Chris, I would love for you to tell them a little bit about your history, and we'll go from there.
Again, Chris Sumter. I've been in the data center industry now for about as long as anybody can be. I started in 1996, with a small company called DitchX. We pioneered managed hosting, which is now basically the cloud. I was in it, basically running sales organizations. Was with the company till 2002. I started working for another company called Raging Wire, which is now NTT Global, and then went to work for a company called Digital Realty Trust, which is now, I would say, probably the largest global data center company. 2007, I became co-founder of another company called Vantage Data Centers. Again, most of the way through both these companies running sales organizations. Took time out, 2012, coached football, watched my kids grow up, decided to get back into the industry about a year later, and helped 2 other companies in the data center industry get started, helped Align Data Centers get up and running, EdgeCore as well. Really got more into the development side of the house, and 2017 met some other individuals that were more private equity, and had my own building that I was developing in Santa Clara, California. And at that point in time, brought in some investment from Macquarie Capital, and about a year ago ended up recapping out of that company and starting Emergent, which at that point in time teamed up with Mike, started bringing my team back together, and really started going out and looking for sites like the Skybox site here, as well as some of the other projects that we have around the country, Pennsylvania, that were really sites that we thought were good projects to bring to the community and develop for really what we target as the big 5, which would be AWS, Google, Microsoft, Meta, companies like that, which are primarily our customer base. And brings us to really today and what we're doing now.
Thank you. I appreciate you being candid. I asked him before we came out here, I said, if you had to rank yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, how long you've been in the industry, with a 10 being the most compared to your peers, both of them said, we've been in here 10s. I mean, we have been with the very first ones. Initially, you started before they were called data centers. I think it's great that we bring probably the most experienced team in the industry to the city of San Angelo. Now, if you'll hand the mic over to Mike. Mike, we'll let you credential yourself here a little bit.
All right. Good evening. I want to thank everybody for giving us an opportunity to come speak to you first. Really do want to be able to answer all your questions. And like Mayor Tom had mentioned, I'm happy to stay behind and answer some questions if you didn't get the answers that you think or the information that you really needed. So start there. I've been doing this a long time too, almost 30 years myself. I'm the technical and delivery guy at Skybox Emergent. I started out on the electrical and overall design of the buildings approximately 30 years ago, but for the last almost 20 years, I've been on the operational side and the delivery side for many companies that I think you guys all use. For a long time, I was the technical leader and SVP at Yahoo. Those of you that might still be carrying a Yahoo email address out there. And I managed that team globally and built their sites all over the world. Transitioned from there to Google. I ran global data center operations, 26 countries and about 6,000 people, and helped start up a lot of sites and partner up with a lot of towns, not just in the U.S., but all over Europe and Asia as well. The last 6 years, up until the end of last year, another company you probably know pretty well, I led the development and of the infrastructure and the operational teams for ByteDance, which is the parent company for TikTok and CapCut and a bunch of other apps that you probably don't know about. But this is really something that I've always done. I've been in charge of managing the teams locally and building the teams locally. I've been responsible for working with the local community, the schools, like we are starting here to create technical programs to put the jobs together and hire locally, and a lot of other things. We're not coming in to build something and run away. We're really looking to come in here and build something and partner with the community and become part of it. I think rightfully so. There's some hesitation because there's some factual instances where maybe some of the developers in our industry haven't done it the right way. And I think there's some valid concerns around the water. I think what we're doing is the most responsible way, and we can talk about that a little bit more later, and we'll explain it to you so you understand the difference, because I think some of the information you have is valid and it is happening in some places. We're just not going to do that here. So anyway.
No, thank you. I think what's important to gather from the introduction of you two is this is not a B team. This is a very experienced senior team. And for you to come here, we're lucky to have you pick our side. So with that, we'll go into the first question. We can put the first slide up. If we can put that up on the screen. Maybe it's going to go up. Brian, is it coming up or would I need to press the button? All right. I got it now. I got to remember you have it. Yes. That one's fun. Technology gets me. All right. So, yeah, if it was connected to a data center, would it work better? Okay. Skybox has been looking at Angelo for over a year. Can you walk us why you looked at San Angelo, how you came to this spot in site selection? And, we kind of sit back and wonder why you got to us. And there's a lot of questions about the substation and where the venue is and location. So let's start there. Why did you start here?
So, when you start looking at site selection for data centers, there's, some real major piece parts that you need to have for a successful project. Land being a very large part of that, right? You need to have at least for a campus, you need several hundred acres. We also want to make sure that, if you look at areas like, Ashburn, Virginia, we as a company, I don't want to build in the middle of what I would consider a population center, right? So when we start looking for things, I want to build outside, away from, neighborhoods, hospitals, schools, things of that nature. So you start taking a look at that. You also start taking a look at major fiber routes, which, there's new fiber routes that are being built right alongside that corridor. And then you start taking a look at, the power, hubs as well. So, the Red Creek substation that's out there is a major regional substation, and, there's a lot of power that sits on that substation. There's no real upgrades that need to be done. There's a lot of capacity that can be drawn on for the data center, and there's also going to be a lot of the new 765 kV upgrades that are going to be feeding into that from the generation sources that are in West Texas. So instead of waiting for that to get into, I would say more, Central Texas, the Dallas, Fort Worth type areas, which is very congested, we wanted to come this way to get closer to the source. So that was a big part of the reason why, just from a reason why we wanted to pick that specific location. It was just all the piece parts were really perfect for site selection.
One thing that amazed me, and this started under Merrick Gunner, but when you came here, the first thing y'all asked for was to be annexed and inside the city limits. All right, so I think people don't understand, when you get size and you get scale, you also get governance and ethics that come along with that. Maybe elaborate a little bit on why you wanted to be inside the city limits, because of all the data centers that have been talked about and noise that's been going, this is the only one that any type of governance will be on at this point. All right, so I know everybody was familiar with the event that happened at Dove Creek, and there's discussion of other data centers that are outside the city limits, and they are moving forward. But understand, because of the input that we've done here, this is going to be the only one that has a set of ground rules and parameters to help it develop. And I want to ask you, why is that important to you?
So, every one of the projects that we've been involved in, we've always had our sites annexed in. I've never stayed in the ETJ. There's been, the vast majority of the reason is I think a lot of the developers, at least the ones that you take a look at that are staying out and want to stay out of annexation, if you look at them as a company, you look at their projects, most of them are new entrants into the data center ecosystem. They don't really understand that getting involved in the community, being able to have access to, I don't want to necessarily say, city water, sewer, things like that, but you do need to be able to have certain levels of city resources, paying for them or not. You need to be able to have that. And I just don't think they really understand that. You start paying into the tax basis, it also helps the community. You're also getting emergency services. Our tax dollars go to help the fire department, police department, things of that nature. It goes to the schools. It just all kind of works into the ecosystem. You're not getting that when you're staying in the ETJ. You don't really get the support from the community either. I think they start learning once they get 1 to 2 years into their developments that they need to come back and start asking for those services and that help. It's a little too late when you get to that point in time.
It was a little bit of a question in some of our mind why you want to do that, because we could have sold you the property, all right, and just run your water pipeline, and then when we looked at what we could bill you for, we'd have been millions of dollars in the hole, all right, because you don't use that much water, but we would have built you a pipeline. But the fact that you asked to be annexed in as a start brought a whole different complexion to how we looked at it as a council. And it's like, okay, we're going to have input, we're going to have governance, we're going to have somebody who wants to be a community partner. And we thought that was great, and we appreciate that. Next slide. Got it. Water protection. This is one of the key hot buttons.
Yep.
It's been a punch, and
Yeah.
it's a top priority for residents. We're talking closed loop, we're talking Gen 3, and I just want to say, we vetted a lot of this out up front. Had it not been to this, we never would have even opened the discussion over a year ago. But y'all brought this to us at the forefront. I want you to talk about Gen 1, Gen 2, and water.
Yeah, this is probably the biggest topic that we've run into ever. And again, like I said, a lot of justified feelings around this topic. Not everybody's a responsible developer and operator, so some of the stories you see online, again, when you get out into the outside of the city limits and your restrictions are zero, people are sinking wells, sucking the aquifer dries, things like that. We just don't believe in that process, right? So what you have developed from a governance and restriction standpoint meets our typical design anyway. So, but to give you kind of an iteration of what the data centers have done, 20 years ago, and really even up to 5 years ago, we didn't have the technology on the air-cooled chiller side to really make them functional and cost-effective. And the technology has moved mainly because of the people like you that come out and have said, we don't want this happening. It's very difficult for us to drive the manufacturing companies to create a system that we're now deploying. If they're making a lot of money on the old system, why innovate it, right? So I think public outcry helped move that along a lot quicker than we could have as an industry. The initial standard design, I think a lot of you would be familiar with. The Gen 1 cooling was traditional evaporative cooling with cooling towers. And basically what we did was we used an enormous amount of water every day. We cycled it through the building. We collected the heat through from air inside, exchanged that very much like on a radiator, and then we pumped that loop up to a tower above the building, and we would use evaporation to reject the heat and circle the water back. And what happens is we could only run that water through the system, roughly 5 or 6 times. As we evaporate it, all the dissolved solids and everything else that's in the water becomes concentrated. We can't use the water, and then we discharge it out and stick it in your sewer system. That was the standard for many years. We all knew that wasn't okay. And I would say even as far back as 2007, we started conditioning the water ourselves. Some places we built evaporative ponds so that we didn't discharge at all. But eventually, we started to drive the industry to make that process more effective because that's all we could do. We looked at using outside air, economizers. At Yahoo, we built, you can look it up online, it's called the Yahoo Chicken Coop. We used 100% outside air. Very specific environments where that works. You can't do it everywhere. So environmentally, it was difficult to site those. But the technology helped us iterate. We were still using a lot of water. So today, I think the best way to describe this closed loop system is the radiator on your car, the cooling system on your car. You fill it up with coolant. It's a closed loop system. You shouldn't be adding water to it, right? I mean, anybody here knows that if you're adding water, there's probably a problem somewhere that needs to be fixed. There are a lot of piping and connections and pumps that can possibly leak, so we might have to add a little bit here and there if we're having to do maintenance. But once we fill the system, it is a closed loop, and we don't lose the water. Over a period of time, we can get some concentration of certain. It really depends on what the water coming in has in it and how the operation affects it. So what we do if we have to swap the water out or add water, we don't discharge into your sewer. We have storage tanks on site. Each building has enough storage to empty into the tank. So even an emergency, I know you guys have put some stuff together on the emergency side of this. We're not going to discharge directly into the sewer. We discharge into our own tanks, and then we will treat the water so that it's basically similar to the way that it came in. We test the water. We provide that testing to the city water department before they allow us to discharge. And then we don't just open the tank and let it go. They tell us how much they can handle based on activity in the city and what's going through the sewer treatment plant. And we slowly discharge it. Continuous monitoring of that. We will commit to make that monitoring available full time. So we'll have it on our website. You can see water usage, water quality, water discharge. We are required to put that reporting together and provide it to the city as well and hold that for 3 years. But that's how we treat it. So there's no discharge. And I think to maybe oversimplify it a little bit, it's just water and glycol. So it's just like radiator fluid in your car and some water, and that's what the system runs on. Chillers are on the roof. They're air cooled, so they're basically just like the big radiator on the front of your car. They're large fins with surface area that we run the water through and blow air over, and it dissipates the heat, and the cooler water goes back into the building. That's basically how it works.
I can't leave a hot topic like that this quick. All right, I mean, we got to stay in it. So we're talking about emergency. You've already said, hey, we'll discharge with our own facility. Let's look at what you've seen. I mean, you've built data centers for 30, 40 years. Do you think, what has amazed me, let me phrase this, every time I have talked to you, you were like, just give it to me and I'll design it that way. All right, I've had a couple questions like, we'll just design that in. And it amazes me how open y'all have been to say, that's not an issue. I mean, water, we have had information talk about billions of gallons that were going to be used in 4 months. Then it went to millions, and then things. Never once have y'all told us exactly how much water you're going to use or require until you've got your design, and you said it's about 15,000. So at this point, when you compare the technology of this proposed site versus what's already out there, how do we benchmark against that?
This is the most advanced as of today. What I would say, even at ByteDance, when we were deploying this same technology, very similar, I should say, not the same, because we all have a little bit of our own secret sauce. But we were deploying this in a tropical environment, so Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Malaysia. 5 years ago, a closed-loop system would have never been able to operate in a high humidity, high temperature environment. The manufacturers have come a long way and really provided us the tools and the equipment to put a system together. And to be honest, it does cost more, and it's not as efficient from an electrical use as the evaporative cooling is, and that's really why a lot of developers are still using the water, because they grab the water for pretty cheap, and it brings the cost down. We as an industry use a metric called PUE. It's power utilization effectiveness. And that basically, so we've always been tracking this. Well, at least for 20 years we've been tracking this. Basically, we look at the amount of power that we use and then the amount of energy that we need to cool off or reject the heat is actually the technical term. We have always tried to bring that PUE down as close to parity as, we can't get to zero, but when I started in this 30 years ago, we were 2 to 2.5 times, so not in the ones, like 2.25, 2.5. A lot of people in the industry will still tell you today that a 1.5 is a good number. We're designing at much lower numbers than that, and that really has been, because we manage it and we measure it. It does reduce the amount of servers we can run, but that's the right way to approach this. Responsible way to build this is to reduce your energy use and the water use as well.
And I appreciate you saying that, because it's our most precious resource. There have been companies that have wanted to come to Angelo, chemical companies, and through the economic development process, we did not welcome that because of their water consumption. And we realize that, and we appreciate the fact that y'all threw that out up front. You've talked about it. Here's what we do. Here's how much we use, and we'll put our name on the bottom of it, and you can hold us accountable for it. Earlier today, you mentioned you're going to have a live website. You brought it up there.
Yep.
As this develops somewhere within the process, the next few years, people will be able to go on daily to your website and see the water consumption.
Yeah, and they can validate our numbers against yours, because our water numbers are going to be metered by you. We're just going to give them to you in real time, but ultimately you guys are the ones that have to validate the data. Same with the discharge. You guys are metering and measuring that as well, but we're just going to provide it to you at will, basically.
Well, it's, sometimes, I would say facts are not popular, and it's when you kick it out like this to say this is exactly what we're going to have, we appreciate that.
The transparency is, I think, the key, right? it's one thing for us to come up here and tell you what we're going to do, but if we don't give you a way to measure and monitor us, and we're not transparent, who are you going to believe, right? I mean, I don't think the industry has earned the trust yet, and we need to do a better job at that, and we're going to do our best.
Well, not just me, I would think the whole room appreciates that and the fact that you're very transparent and upfront about what your consumption is going to be. Let me roll to the next slide. Noise mitigation. Talk about hum of a data center. You've already committed to the 60 decibel level. I think, Patrick, we have a meter over there at the table. We're exceeding 60 right now, but talking at the property lines, that's something that it becomes a hotbed for the surrounding environments. And so we're roughly 4 miles away. Tell me how you stay within those limits. Prove it.
Yeah, so once you've provided a requirement, and the requirements that you've given are not difficult for us as an industry to meet, there's no reason you guys should hear it. I mean, it's just, again, this is really, if you've got a responsible developer and operator, it shouldn't be built so that you know it's there. I can tell you, and I have built a lot of hundreds of these sites over almost 30 years, and I've only had one site where we had a noise issue. And basically the way this works is we start with a noise level that we need to meet, and it's typically not an issue. I mean, we can usually design within it. But as we start to place the buildings and we orient the buildings so that the equipment is not facing you or facing the road, we have to choose mechanical equipment and electrical equipment. All of that equipment has noise ratings that are engineered. It's in the manufacturer, documentation and specifications. So we start by putting an assembly of pieces together that meet the minimum requirement. Then we run into what we would call the site-related issues, and this is why we do a study. So once we have it all put together and engineered to work, I think this is where a lot of people fail, is once you apply that to the actual location, things can change. So you don't really know how the noise is going to react to the local environment. You'd be surprised sometimes the amount of moisture in the air. There's some crazy things that we've had to deal with, but we will use a company that we both agree on to do an independent study so that we can model the equipment and model that for the site. And then you guys have actually created some pretty robust language so that we will be testing for the first year to make sure that everything that we've engineered will meet the minimum requirements, if not better. There's all kinds of tools that we use. The equipment has sound attenuating properties to it. The generators, I think a lot of people are potentially worried about. Our engines go inside a sound attenuating enclosure, and that sound rating is met before it even leaves the footprint of the generator.
That's been a hot one. Several people have brought up, they're going to cycle those generators, and you can time those. It's always been, what do you need?
Yeah, so the generators, they don't sound any different than a truck driving by. We don't run those generators unless there's a utility outage. Other than once a month for 30 minutes, it's like having a car in the garage. If you don't run it once a month, remember, these are emergency backup, so when the power shuts off, we have battery systems in the building that bridge the time it takes for the engines to start up and get ready to take the load. We can't have an engine fail, so we have to test them once a month for 30 minutes, and then we shut them down. And that's all. So both the noise and the discharge from those are regulated by.
You could stagger those. You could do those anyway when.
Yeah. So we would never run them outside of the normal business hours. So it wouldn't be at night. Wouldn't be on weekends. It would be during the middle of the day. We will give you notice. Literally, each building runs for 30 minutes and it shuts down. You likely are never going to notice that they actually run, right?
Well, there's a lot of facilities here in town that have emergency backup generators, and hospitals, there's pharmaceutical companies, all of those have it available. I've never heard anybody complain about it just because of the perimeter and the cushion we have.
Some of what I heard about the low hum, again, I think it got covered in the zoning. Again, that's an assembly and a construction means and method issue typically. None of the equipment that we buy and install is meant to have a low hum. It does happen, and
I wanted to make sure you brought this up because you told me you
I did
engineered
have it-
one out.
I did have this happen to me, and it was in Ashburn, Virginia, which is a very dense data center. It's actually, it's pretty much the center of the universe for all things in the internet. Mainly, and it started there because the subsea cables leaving the U.S. out is land in that area, and they wanted access to the subsea cable. But we had we did have an air handling unit. When I say I mean hundreds of them on the site, and it was basically 5 fans on a wall, 4 in corner and 1 in the center. And for some reason, that center fan, we could never get it to balance, and it did create a hum. And one of the neighbors did bring it up, and we tried for a month or two to balance them. The only way for us to fix it was to remove that 5th fan, and those are just the things you have to do. You don't say, deal with it. Your regulations are great because if there's a complaint, there's a study, there's some testing and measurement required. If we're over, we have a short amount of time to give you a plan to fix it. So if there's an issue, just let us know, and we'll take care of it. But there's a lot of measurement and management around it that's put in place to make sure that you guys don't have to ever get to a point where you complain.
Yeah, it's one of the times I called you, I said, I'm running across this question and I don't find it anywhere to find an answer. And you just said, no. And what was funny, straight up, you said, we had one. You gave me that exact example and you said, you know what, I just engineered it out. I was kind of like, well, how'd you do it? I just took it out. Oh, okay. I thought that was really great. Let's go on to the next question. Construction impact. Let's talk about a build this size.
Yeah.
The timeline. Y'all are going to share this one back and forth, but this one I want to talk about here in the pre-phase, during the buildup and the closure part, and then compare it to some things you see happening in West Texas that I say have been unfairly compared to ourselves.
Yeah. So the scale of these are very different from site to site. What I would say is, I think what you're seeing over there in West Texas right now, that's the first and only of its kind. Even as long as I've been doing this, I've never seen anything like it. So it's difficult to explain that and then explain what we're building. We do have multiple buildings, and I think if you think about it, everybody's looking at this like it's one big data center. The reality is, this is like building a commercial industrial park that might have multiple buildings and roads and parking, and that's ultimately what it is. The only difference is it's secure. You can't get in unless you work there because for a number of reasons. So we are building 3 gigawatts. I mean that's 3x plus 300 megawatts of on-site energy generation. It's a very different project than what we're proposing. This is still a large project if you look at data center development over the last 20 years, but we're going to stage these, but we're starting with one building, and then we will stagger them and build them one building at a time. So we're not talking about thousands of people coming into town for 3 years. We are talking about hundreds, maybe 600 or 700 people during a peak, and then it goes down. So there should be minimal impact. Look, there's no way to say we're not gonna be renting hotel rooms and renting places and eating in your restaurants, and like that is gonna happen because these guys are gonna live here for 3 to 4 years.
A lot of the people shouldn't be living here.
Yeah, but I think the first thing we try to do is make sure that we're sourcing labor and partnering with the local construction companies, and we're going to work. We've already started working with some of them to minimize that. We don't have a staffing plan yet because we haven't put a schedule together yet because you haven't.
We just kind of give you the guidelines
today. You
today.
haven't approved the project yet, but I've built a lot of these, and I can tell you we're not peaking at 1,000 people. So it's also out on the edge of town, so you're not going to see traffic rolling through town. The other thing too is we try and stagger some of this work on shifts. Once the buildings get closed in, we will start changing the shifts so some of the mechanical electrical work can happen in the second and third shift hours. It reduces the number of people on site, and I think what a lot of people don't understand is the more people we have on site, the more congested it is. the harder it is for us to build it. The more crowded it is, our safety goes down, the quality of work goes down. So we're not in a race. We're looking to, take a logical approach and do this smart. And we've done this a lot. We know we can do it with minimal impact.
It's been hard for us to define how that comparison is, because everybody in here has friends in Abilene and it's just been a boom. And I said that's not what we're going to see here to some degree. We're going to see some, but not at the extent we see. And we all have friends and neighbors that have gone through that experience. I have a friend that's, I guess, working for Oracle on the project over in Abilene, and he elaborated.
I think Chris can maybe give a little more insight to the impact on Abilene. It's not just one site.
Yeah, if you take a look at Abilene, like Mike was explaining, it's a 3 gigawatt site, and there is a significant level of difference, right? They were trying to build that site as fast as they could. It's the first Stargate site. They threw as many bodies at it as they possibly could, and the size and scale of it continues to grow. We've only got 350 acres, guys. We can only build so much product on that site. I couldn't throw 6,000 people at it at once if I wanted to. There's just not enough acreage there. But when you start taking a look at that, you've got the Stargate site. You've also got another site, which is about an hour to the west of Abilene, which is another multi-gigawatt site. There's no services out where that site is. So all of those construction workers and, the people that are working on that project are also living in Abilene. So they're commuting back and forth. So, all of those services are coming there. And then if you go up to Haskell, there's another multi-gigawatt project, which is, I don't know who it is, but I can't say. But it is another one of the big 5, which is another project. Well, if anybody in this room has been to Haskell, it's a very small town. There's not a lot of services in Haskell. All of those people are also living in Abilene. So, yes, it is putting a significant strain on the local community in Abilene. We get it. I don't see that level of strain happening on San Angelo. There's not the level of activity happening here. I don't think that it's going to happen anytime.
And if some of those people, should this move forward, if some of those people still want to stay in Abilene and drive back and forth, I don't think anybody in this room would have a problem with that. All right, I'm just saying we have to be practical about what's going to happen and moving forward. And I appreciate y'all's honesty on that. Moving forward, what you think is going to be factual.
What is the size of the site?
I tell you what, we have to go through this presentation. That's public comment. I can't let that happen. But you submitted questions, and we'll get to those in a minute. And they actually have that answered, and we're going to get to that here in a minute. Job creation. Beyond the construction phase, what do we see? A lot of people have said, you're going to come here. How many people is it going to bring? What are we going to retain? I look at it and go, for the revenue that you're going to bring to the city, it's the least impactful stress on infrastructure you'll ever see. But people here want to know how many people are going to start. And let's just maybe skip all the way to the end and say potentially how many jobs are going to be here. But I think people have to realize Goodfellow is going to love to interface. We can guess. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out who maybe your top 3 candidates are. And for our university, for our Goodfellow people, for our high school students, them to be able to come through in the next 10, 15 years and say, well, I was at a campus and did an internship for these people, just is the coolest thing in the world. This is about some opportunities there, but I want to go back and talk a little bit about the job creation.
Yeah, so it's in a couple of different buckets. There's the first one is really just the facility teams that have to operate and manage let's call it the building, right? Mechanical, electrical, the entire campus. There's probably 100 to 150 jobs that are full-time. These are 7 by 24 operational facilities. So, daytime staffing is a little higher, but these facilities have to have people on site, like a hospital kind of. The facilities team is what we refer to them, are there 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. So you can imagine one role in the building that has to cover 7 days a week, 24 hours plus holidays takes 3 people. That one job is a 3-person job for just that task. So the numbers around that are pretty well established industry-wide because we know what it takes. The IT infrastructure operations inside is vastly different, and it could be at least that much, and it could be double that. It really depends on what IT equipment gets installed in that building, and that's anywhere from it's.
So will you specify that equipment, or will your renters?
No, we don't. We don't specify. Look, the IT equipment typically refreshes every 3 to 5 years. So day one, they put it in. They run it for 3 to 5 years, depending on what it is, and at a certain point, new technology has come out, and the cost effectiveness of operating the servers that are in there become. There's a complicated algorithm that we use based on power consumption and output of the CPU. Eventually, it just doesn't make sense to keep it, so we pull it all out and put new, and that's a pretty constant every 5 year. 3 to 5 year, depending on what it is.
So, not only with that, the value of the facility would increase every 5 years too, right? The value of it based on the interior of the equipment, things like that.
That refreshes every 3 to 5 years. Correct.
Every 3 to 5. Okay.
Yeah. So those jobs cover the installation and what we refer to as break fix. You could have 1 million servers in there. Anyone here that has a computer knows you got to do stuff with it pretty regularly. So it's replacing components, keeping them operating. There's a pretty large staff of network technicians. There's a lot of fiber and structured cabling and network equipment that is always being upgraded, moved, added. So there's a lot of fixed jobs, but then I think the third bucket is there's a lot of peripheral jobs that get created to support the site, and those are jobs created in town for services that the entire function needs. So we have external contractors that we hire, food service. Like there's I can't put a number on that because every operation is slightly different. But we're talking about 400 probably permanent on-site and a few hundred external but indirect support to the project.
You can see lots of numbers, but the one I see that brings the most consistency to what we're talking about is for every one building you have on a site at a data center, you're probably going to have 6 or 7 businesses that are going to come up, just a ratio of 1 to 6. If you put in 4 buildings, we could look at roughly 24 businesses that would come here. These are jobs that left Middle America and are coming back to Middle America.
That's correct. Yeah.
With that, let me move over to the next slide. Here's one that AEP could probably answer this more, and they do answer some questions, but let's talk about grid reliability. People talk about brownouts. You're going to be using all of our electricity. What happens when it's 114 degrees in Angelo for 60 days straight? How do you manage that? And what we want to make sure you're not going to steal the electricity.
Understood. I do think that they answer it pretty technically, but I'll give more of a non-utility layman's answer. So before we even get final site selection on one of these sites, we have to go to the utility, being AEP and then ERCOT, and we have to pay them to do a study on the grid to determine whether they can supply this or not. And if they can't, they tell us no. If they can with enough generation, but they need additional infrastructure, and we're talking about transmission lines, switchyard, substation upgrades, they will come back to us and say, we can serve it, but there's all of these upgrades that need to be done, and then we're responsible to pay for that. So the infrastructure coming to the site and the cost of that never gets passed on to the ratepayer. It's a direct cost, and we not only do we have to pay for the study and the engineering, but we have to put the money up front for those improvements long before we actually dig, put the shovel in the dirt. So, and then a lot of people think that we go in and negotiate a rate. State of Texas and ERCOT and AEP, we're governed by a tariff. We don't get to negotiate the rate. So we pay what the tariff and the laws say we pay. That's not the same in every state and every municipality, but here in Texas we don't get to pick our. Well, here in San Angelo we're not choosing what we pay for power.
Well, and I think sometimes people don't understand that when the grid gets tight, there's a hierarchy in who gets cut off first and how it works down. The last people to be cut off will be a hospital and a nursing home, but there's a hierarchy, and you have the ability with generators basically to be an island.
Yeah, we do. If there is, so our backup generation is, we're, from a business perspective, in the way that our commitments to the tenants, we have to have enough emergency backup generation on site to run roughly 48 hours on an island, right? So if there's an emergency, or if there's a load issue, like an overload issue, they can ask us to go to generators and run and operate, and we can do that.
Well, and that's when it comes up a lot. It's a hot button, and people are like, you're going to take all that? I'm like, no, you can be self-sufficient. You can survive on your own to help us get through those periods, whether it be cold or
No,
heat.
ERCOT is not going to let us impact you. It's pretty clear in the way that they operate. That's not how it works.
I get it. All right, so we'll go to the next slide. Here is, I think this may be our last slide. Well, a lot of people have talked about, well, what are you going to give us for this? I mean, what is everybody going to get? Some form of a handout, what makes this go? And then we talk about corporate social responsibility. This isn't anything we can force on you. Every company in the world, every nonprofit, every business, commercial, they make their own decisions on what they're going to give to the local community. The fact that we proposed this question, to me, to bothered me. I had hesitation going, it's not our right to demand that, all right? It's up to you to say what you can and cannot do. And I'll go back to the first time we sat on the stage and I think Chris gave a very good answer at that point. Give us some examples of what you've done before. These are not guarantees, these aren't promises, but throw out some examples of what you do for a community.
Yeah, I'm going to let Chris take this one, but I understand what you're saying, and I think the fact that we're wanting to be annexed into the city means we want to be part of the community. So we understand it's not your right, but that's why we're here, right?
So, this question really breaks down into two pieces. We're the developer of the project, and as the developer, we'll develop the buildings, and then we're going to lease these buildings to, again, a Fortune 500 company. So, there's certain things that we will do for the community, and then when we have a tenant that comes in, the tenant that leases the campus from us, the tenant will also get ingrained in the community. And those tenants always come in and will do things for the community above and beyond what we do. So, I can only speak to, the things that we generally do. Now, once the tenant comes in, that'll be a completely different discussion topic. But you will see them get much more ingrained in the community. Now, for us, every community is different. The ask is always a little bit different. The needs are always a little bit different. But we do try to spend time, and we have been having conversations with Mayor Tom, about the needs of the community. But some of the things that we've done in different communities are their apprenticeship programs, they're sponsoring school programs. We've sponsored, Concert in the Park series for, 10 years running in other communities. We've, the fire trucks for, Westlake Village and one of the suburbs of Chicago. I mean, there's just different things that different communities, have needs for. So I can't put my finger on one specific thing that we would say, this is what we're going to do for the community. I don't want to say that we're only going to do one thing for the community, because that's not really how this works. There's a partnership that we want to have with the community. So, we're open to doing different things. We just need to be able to spend more time with the mayor and come up with what are the things that are going to impact the community the most, and those are the things that we're going to focus on.
I can add a little context too from the tenant side, because that I was the tenant for the last probably 18 years, and operating dozens of these sites all over the globe. What I can tell you, every one of the hyperscalers or Big Five or FAMGA, there's all kinds of names for them. We all have a dedicated role on the team on a campus like this that is the community manager and the community relation team. They're there for you if you've got questions about what's going on the site. If you're not happy with something that's going on the site, they have a full-time team that is here to engage. But they're also working with you. The needs change, and the teams a lot, we're hoping the majority of the people that get hired there are people that live here, and I don't think we're going to see commuters coming into San Angelo, but there's a lot of community engagement, and there'll be dedicated people to do that. Guaranteed. It's too big of an operation, and it's too risky to have a negative impact. So it's a pretty big high priority for the operational teams that will be on site.
It's always an ask. It's never an obligation. And, it's never a handout, and people do that respectfully to help a community grow. We've seen it in renewables with, wind turbine companies, with solar power companies, but we're starting to talk about the big five. And I just have to sit back and think, okay, how cool would it be for students of people here in the next 5-10 years say, I'll throw out, any one of those big five. Yeah, I did an internship with them. They subsidized this project. Yeah. ASU would be excited to have this on stream. Goodfellow's very excited about this. There's things that move forward that make it applicable for everybody to actually get some benefit out of this. I know we've talked about kind of the school boundaries here on the profit. Now, the majority of this lies in the very best school district. And due to the Robin Hood law, and all of y'all are familiar with it, all of that money is going to go to very best, and then the state's going to take what's the excess part of that and go on. But I mean, what has amazed me was even in these discussions, y'all were open to, if there's ideas to help make this thing blend to help more schools, we will certainly engage in those discussions. Yeah. Nobody else has come to town and ever made that obligation. I mean, the fact that you've signed on to do a lot of this certainly validates some of that. So we appreciate that. Let me see. Okay, so everyone that sent in a question, this website went live at 5:30 today. Every question that was submitted got summarized and put up here. All right, I can't thank staff and council for rolling through and putting there, and I was like, so you've put all of this up? And they're like, yes, we have. Okay. If you don't find your specific question, it was probably summarized. All right. We only answered those questions that we could give you a 100% factual answer. If it was something that involved an opinion or was subjective, it didn't get answered. We're not going to back ourselves into a corner like that. We wouldn't back you into a corner like that. But we wanted to put up everything we could to let you see those answers that you submitted. I've got a mayor's statement on the front that talks about my obligation as we go forward, council's obligation, and I will say this at this point, and I don't know, how many of y'all got a tax letter the past week? All right, I think 2 times of y'all have sent me an invoice about that, and or an email about that, and I say, I get it. But I will say, this is the door and the path moving forward. This is a door to make your city tax rate and county tax rate and school tax rate start with a different number. And that number is lower. The city tax rate starts with a 7. Over time, this gives an opportunity. One of the few things we talk about, because we don't know the full money, but there's franchise fees and there's property tax. There's, depending if you hit a certain benchmark, there may be sales tax, there may be not. But the ability of this to help us is the only amount of money that I've seen in the past 9 years, and probably for the next 10 years in front of us, a way to, as we say, it's a way to see more people come here. It's a way to put a splash pad in every park, all right? It's a way to, I need 2 fire stations. I don't know if y'all know what fire stations cost, but they cost $12 million, all right? I need 20 more. I need 20 more policemen, all right? We are 20 policemen understaffed right now. So the revenue of this helps us accomplish those goals. It's not a sales pitch. I just want you to understand this is a door, and it's up to y'all, and y'all have had lots of input to move forward with it if you think that's a way to move forward or not. With that, we're going to move into public comment. I think we deserve a big round of applause to Mike and Chris for what you've done. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. You going to take that mic back there? Gotcha. At this point, as in fashion with all of our city council meetings, we're going to move into public comment. People wishing to speak at the city council meeting must sign in prior to 5:30 p.m. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Comments must be relevant to the authority of the city. Please state your name, address, or single-member district before beginning your remarks. Citizens bringing materials for distribution to city council members during the meeting must bring a minimum of 12 copies. Responses from officials will not be provided during this portion of the meeting. So Heather, where are you? Heather, let me start with this. How many public comments do we have signed up?
30.
All right, so we have 30 comments. Just so you know, they are allowed up to 3 minutes each. I will tell you, just because you signed up for it doesn't mean you have to provide it. And if your questions were answered here tonight, I would say that may help you. We'll be here to the very end, us and council will. Other people have time obligations. But with that, Heather, call your first public comment.
Tanya Atkins.
Tanya, where's the timer going to be, Heather? You've got the timer. I'm not going to sit up here. I'm going to go sit over here at the table. But you are given that and you're on film.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and Skybox representatives. My name is Tanya Atkins. I'm a resident of San Angelo, District 2, owner of a Texas licensed private security company. I got your 6. As reported by the San Angelo Standard Times in the city's public announcement for tonight's meeting, as we saw, residents have submitted numerous questions in advance, including the direct question, will construction jobs be filled with local community companies or out-of-town workers? This question deserves serious attention. When work is awarded to local San Angelo contractors and service providers, every dollar spent typically generates about $1.8 to $2.2 in total economic activity. On a proposed $16 billion project like this data center with construction expected to span several years, that would mean roughly $29 to $35 billion in total local economic output for San Angelo over the construction period, including wages for the workers, contracts with local suppliers, and spending throughout our own community. San Angelo has seen major projects in recent years that no public records have shown the exact split between local and outside contractor spending. For example, the recent Shannon Medical Center West Tower expansion used an outside prime contractor from Alabama. The $41.6 million Coliseum renovation bond that our taxpayers is paying for is also likely to send a large portion of those dollars out of town. This data center gives us the opportunity to actually change that pattern and keep far more of the economic benefit here. When a substantial portion of the work instead goes to national and regional firms headquartered outside of the Concho Valley, such as Allied Universal, other companies based in Kerrville and Sweetwater, economic leakage can reduce that benefit by 30 to 50% or more. That could cost San Angelo billions of dollars in lost wages, local businesses, revenue, and tax collections that never stay here. Council members, this is our community. Why would we not do everything possible to keep all of that money, the billions of dollars circulating here, creating jobs and opportunities for our town, our families, our neighbors, instead of sending them out of town? Security services offer a clear practical opportunity. Large data centers often default to national providers, yet local qualified firms like mine are fully capable of delivering professional 24-hour site security, access control, traffic management, work zones, in coordination with off-duty peace officers with faster response, lower travel costs, and spending that remains right here in San Angelo. Council members, I respectfully ask that you and the project team give meaningful preference and consideration to all qualified local business and San Angelo businesses and contractors, not just for security, but for any portion of work that can be effectively performed from within our community. This single decision can help ensure that San Angelo receives the greatest possible economic return from this project and keep as many dollars as possible circulating right here among our own residents and businesses. Thank you for your time.
Heather, second.
Stephen Marks. Stephen Marks.
Let's go to the next one, Heather.
Catherine Bayer.
Catherine.
Catherine Bayer.
Go to the next one.
Adam Jonke.
Adam.
Okay.
The next one.
Shannon Carpenter.
Shannon.
Okay.
Go to the next one, Heather.
Libby Grafa.
Libby's here. Sorry.
Hello, my name is Libby Grafa. I am a San Angelo resident. I'm sorry, I don't know the number of my district. But I'm in 5. Okay, I'm in 5. There we go. I just know who my councilman is. You answered most of my questions. I appreciate that. And I will look at the website for a little more clarity of, I think my answers will be there. But the one question I do have is, who is going to receive all the data services? Well, San Angelo, you're bringing in someone in the Big 5. Who's going to receive all of that service? So that's a question. I am going to look for the total amount of gallons you plan to use. You said it's going to take 12 months, I believe I understood, to fill the quantity you need, but I didn't get a number. And I'm sure you know what that is. You just didn't tell us that. You did say our utilities will not rise with the use you're going to be using our water and our electricity. I think I understood that. That's important to me. I'm glad you're here explaining this. I hope more San Angelo residents will come. They'll hopefully, if this is going to be online or on television, they'll view it and become informed. Thank you for your time.
Heather Wiley.
Good evening. My name is Heather Wiley. I'm a resident of District 3. On November 19, 1863, Abraham Lincoln said in his favorite speech, the Gettysburg Address, that this nation was a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Isn't it amazing that before San Angelo even existed, a man would speak a phrase from one of the most historically significant speeches in American history, and it applies even to you, our elected leaders. You are chosen leaders, elected by the people and for the people, and weirdly, there's nothing in there about representing corporations or data centers. The choice before you is one of humanity, a choice for the people. Set aside your justifications about what this might do for the city budget or property taxes, and consider instead the ways your people have been trying to communicate with you through Facebook posts, the Nextdoor app, yard signs, bumper stickers, petitions, and emails, even if they say the same thing. Our public comments, our presence. Your people are speaking in many different ways. The collective voice is loud. They are telling you at a minimum they want a moratorium for a full length of time allowed by the state, and truly they want no data center at all. Can you hear the people over the noise pollution of the data centers you're trying to bring into our home? Thank you.
Allie Devereaux.
Do I have to tell you my address because I'm not in a specific district?
County resident.
Yeah, county resident. And I'm just here to reiterate this. However you want to spin it, we do not have the water resources for hyperscale data centers in San Angelo. And the people of Texas don't want the 765 kV power lines all over the state that are needed to power them. Those lines will stand taller than the Statue of Liberty, and that contains a powerful symbology. Power over liberty. I think I speak for the majority of the people in this room when I say we want this city council to engage in projects that empower the people and help make life more livable, not schemes that virtually enslave us and make the costs of living even more unbearable than they already are, while the taxpayers and ratepayers subsidize billionaires and corporations. We want you to actually take care of the watershed and our resources and not campaign to sell us projects that will threaten those resources and sacrifice everything that we most value here. If you really want to create a legacy, stop trying to sell this right now. Start representing the people and listen to their concerns and their knowledge, not with an ear to sway them or prove them wrong, but actually consider that they might have something valid to say that you may have overlooked. One thing you're overlooking is the fact that the city owns thousands of acres of land outside the city limits with miles of frontage on the Concho River, and you've never once thought to do one good thing in the interest of protecting this land as a valuable natural resource in the recharge and riparian zone of our primary water supply. San Angelo's City Council has entertained plans for giant private prison complexes, waste gasification plants where we could burn our trash and invite other communities to come burn their trash too. The people of San Angelo managed to get the council to come to their senses on those two projects, and now we're facing data centers. Can we envision something that would actually protect our water supply with all of these lands that the city owns? Other Texas cities have invested hundreds of millions of dollars raised by either bonds or passed by the people or voter-approved 1/8-cent sales tax to protect hundreds of thousands of acres of land in their watersheds. This city already owns thousands of acres of land in our watershed. It's time you start focusing on protecting that and not just exploiting it. And until you start rehabilitating that land, you do not demonstrate any semblance of having stewardship. And we can't trust you.
Please wrap up your comments.
Okay, thank you.
Jatan Giese.
Hi, Jatan Giese, District 5. First, I saw that we weren't going to do a crypto mining, but it wasn't defined if we would be AI processing versus just data storage. I understand the resources or demands are different on that. First, why do we want these data centers here? Do we have plenty of resources here? No, not that. What guarantees do we have that their water and electric bills will not increase like we've seen all across the nation? Will this be, how is this going to be the exception to the rule? Is it going to bring a significant number of permanent jobs? I don't know if it's worth the resources that we have that we're exchanging for those. Are we equipped to handle the pollution? There's no wastewater treatment around to treat the chemicals, and I still haven't seen any kind of study on the fine particulate matter that would be produced. Do we have adequate housing or even a police force that's available? We know the answer to that one too. There are so many unknowns when it comes to long-term health risk and resource risk. It has been decided, it hasn't even been decided on the federal level who would be legally liable if there is harm caused by data centers, construction of, or long-term environmental effects. I'm afraid that even if it gets decided, where will there actually be a company to be held liable? Between all the LLCs and foreign-owned companies, I can't imagine tracking any of them down if there's a pollution leak or when it comes out how harmful these things are to humans and animals. All of those are good reasons not to build a data center, but I feel like it goes so much deeper. This is the equivalent of building our own prison cells, monitoring, flock cameras, social score, restricted travel. Please don't pretend that that's not where this is leading, and I'm pretty sure no one wants that. I know investments have been made, but the City Council is supposed to represent its constituents, not themselves, and not some company from out of town. Why is the City Council making decisions based on opinions? Why is it not making decisions voiced here today and over the months? We vote on school bonds because it's an expense to us. this is going to be an expense to us, whether it's through utilities or other. If this is good for us, try proving it to us and putting it to a vote for the public. Thank you.
Steve Elanius.
Steve Elanius, President and CEO of the San Angelo Chamber of Commerce, 418 West Avenue B. When we talk about the data centers, one of the most immediate and tangible impacts that it can have is on our hotel occupancy tax rate, or the hot tax revenue. During construction phase, which will last anywhere between 36 and 60 months, you're going to bring hundreds of workers to this community, contractors and specialized crews that will be staying in our hotels and pumping money into our local economy. But it doesn't stop during the construction phase. Once the data center is built, there'll be technicians, corporate visitors, and folks coming to this community because of the data center. Now here's where it becomes transformational. The increased hotel tax revenue coming into the community is going to allow us to have the resources to promote this community more, to bring more attractions and more events to San Angelo. The visitors that stay overnight means more revenue and more visibility for our community. And then finally, over the 3 to 5 year window or period of time, with a steady increase in hotel occupancy, it's going to create an opportunity for more hotel development in our community, thus increasing more revenue for the community and giving us more resources to market the community. So I'm here to say I'm in support of it. I appreciate Mayor and City Councils for bringing this together and giving us a chance to hear, present the thoughts and what's involved with it. And I think you're doing an outstanding job. Thank you.
Gabe Menchaca.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, citizens of San Angelo. My name is Gabe Menchaca, and I live in single-member District 6. I want to begin by acknowledging that citizens who come here with concerns deserve to be heard. I said this back in January during I think it was the January 13th meeting, and I believe all of your voices have been heard many times. Voices in support of this opportunity deserve to be heard as well. And I believe that we may just be the silent majority, those of us who are in favor of this data center. And that is why I have returned tonight in support of data center development in San Angelo. I believe it is important that we separate legitimate questions from broad assumptions. Not every proposal, not every company, and not every project belongs in the same category because of one meeting, one rumor, or one difficult interaction. That is exactly why due diligence exists. I believe that due diligence is already occurring with the Skybox project. I've seen it happen, I've seen it being talked about, and it's the same facts that I heard a year ago are being repeated, and they're being very consistent from the authorities who are doing and putting this together, both the city as well as Skybox. There are many people involved in getting this right, which includes the council, the city staff, utilities, engineers, community stakeholders, us citizens. Collectively, our job is to examine the facts, infrastructure, water, power, economic value, and whether a project fits San Angelo long term. That process should be careful and transparent, and I believe it is, and I believe that you are being transparent. We should also recognize the opportunity before us. It's been said several times this evening. A major development project can create years of construction work for local trades, electric, construction, different trades, contractors, suppliers, and small businesses. Beyond construction, long-term operations can bring technology or technical jobs, high-paying jobs, facility management roles, security maintenance, and additional economic activity that benefit our community long-term. I have heard questions about water, noise, and infrastructure tonight and months leading up to today. Those are all fair questions, but when answers are provided through study, agreements, and oversight, and through events like this, they should be taken seriously and not misconstrued or reported differently in the community or on social media. Thank you.
Richard Summers.
Got it? Okay. I was kind of stunned to discover that Skybox let a lease on this land instead of going ahead and purchasing it, particularly since they've had an option on the land since just before the mayor was elected. That shows me something, that there's a little uncertainty. In fact, San Angelo is entering a period of hyperscale development with high uncertainty, increasing friction, as we can tell, and growing public scrutiny seeded by the Skybox project and those to follow. That's not speculation. It's happening right now. It's going to cause things that we're not prepared to deal with. One of the biggest things in my mind, beyond the water, beyond their energy, is we don't have the housing even for 600 to 700 extra people. We have housing problems right now with the citizens that are living here. They need the attention, not a glamorous project. For example, people dealing with housing instability for which this council has already been imminently warned regarding impacts should the data center come in, that housing arriving eventually doesn't float. Eventually doesn't house somebody tonight. It doesn't house somebody tonight, nor a year from tonight. Eventually doesn't work. For a lot of reasons, and I'm not going to stand up here and list them all because you'll be able to read about them all on public record. I am submitting tonight a formal ethics complaint addressing issues of COSA data center transparency, communication control, and public access involving most of the upper level staff and elected officials of this city. That complaint stems from what uncertainty has already occurred with the data center. I proposed a set of ordinances earlier called the civic ordinances. These were designed to keep that from happening. I've received no response on it, but that's all right. By the way, because the city attorney is referenced in these ethics complaints, I've also requested an independent review of them when they are complete. I'm going to do that now. I just want to remind you folks, council and mayor, when your constituents believe they're not being fully informed and not being fairly heard, they will not acquiesce. They will act. Thank you.
Wade Wall.
Hi, I'm Wade Wall. I've been a resident of this city for nearly a decade at this point. There's a couple of things I would like to address that were glossed over in the first part of the presentation. Sorry, let me get my notes here. Phytoremediation. They talked about that as a possible way to offset the heavy metals that will be leaching into the ground. Phytoremediation has never been used on scale at all. So you just want to use some untested technology on us to offset the ecological. Sorry, I'm not good at public speaking. The ecological ramifications of this data center. So without any sort of long-term plan and studies on that, you just want to use that? That's fine. Okay, I'm going to bounce around to something else. You said the tenant will be, you don't have the exact name of who the tenant is going to be. So it could be Palantir, it could be, you know, any number of one of these AI companies. Palantir recently made a manifesto that they posted on Twitter talking about their what they want to use their resources for the future, including AI-driven weapons systems that this data center could potentially be used for. I would like to see, you know, sorry, I'm a little frustrated right now at the moment. I would like to see possibly legislation or statutes that would disbar them from using this for that, because I would not like our tax dollars being used for killing people. I think a lot of people would like to believe that. Sorry, let me get my notes again. Again, not good at public speaking, so sorry. Another thing, closed loop systems are not reliable at this point. There have been multiple studies being shown, and I don't have them right here, again, phones at 1%, so, that show that they have not been fully, all the kinks have been worked out of that system yet. Also, the wastewater, what are the consequences for violating the wastewater statutes? If it's a fine, then that's just a fee. You know, it's not anything that will, it's not anything that will be something that can, sorry, again, not good at public speaking. It's just, I don't know why we're doing this. Why are we doing this? So.
Elizabeth Morales.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Morales. I live in District 4. I've been a resident here for over 30 years. I'm also not very good at public speaking, but I am very frustrated with especially how this meeting has been run this evening. Essentially, it was a sales pitch, all of it, and snake oil lies over and over again. Anybody with the internet knows what the numbers are. With this, I do also want to say that with that 200-foot buffer that everybody's so proud and in awe of, these centers radiate up to 16 degrees of increased temperatures, up to 6 miles, even more, depending on how the weather tends to be that day. Paul Ann and its surrounding areas within Harriet community is going to be up to 130 degrees, in the summertime, most of the year. And we're just supposed to deal with that? I don't think so, I'm sorry. Also, with the higher cost of living and taxes going up, everything going up, utilities going up, because they will. The higher cost of living is going to bring more homelessness to all of us, not just those who are kind of on the fence now. A lot of us are going to be dealing with bills, unpaid bills, and worse. I mean, there's going to be a lot more people out on the streets. And when that happens, there's a lot more crime. And our mayor has already stated that the police force is at a lack right now. And so, I mean, I don't understand how this could be even brought up for consideration. This is a horrible idea. This city, this area of Texas cannot support this type of data center. This is not just a data center, it's a mega data center. And it's not just one building, it's going to be 8, 12, 14. Once that one building first comes, plenty more are already planned behind it. We already know of 3 coming in our area that we're actively fighting right now. We're going to be surrounded with data centers, each one of them bringing up to 16 degrees of increased temperatures. I mean, I can't wrap my brain around it. And I mean, that's all I've got. Thank you.
Antonio Martinez.
Good evening, Council. I'm Antonio Martinez, a resident of Single Member District 4. You've heard me speak a few times. Today, I am also unscripted. I'm just going to ask some things that should be obvious, and it's just purely a rhetorical question, but how can we guarantee the ethics of what data would be stored if this is just leased out to another company? Because that's another shell of deniability or accountability removed from where it should be. So, I mean, you have Grok, owned by Elon Musk, submitting CSAM, child sexual abuse material, and being shared on his website, being created by AI. We have women with deep fakes being circulated. We don't know where this data is stored. We can't guarantee that. That's one concern. So, excuse me. And another concern is that we talk about bringing in people from outside to work construction jobs, and then they fill up our hotels, and it brings in all this revenue, but it also brings in profit. And that profit is not transferred to working people that have to supply the services to these workers, hotel workers, food service workers. These people are out working right now in McDonald's, Walmart. They can't be here. All of us here have the ability to be here. So this isn't the end-all be-all of who has something to say. Those people are also going to suffer from this too. And all that money coming in, they don't see the benefits of that. They have to stay and work the same job that they have and hope that they get a magnanimous $1 raise after a year, which is $40 a week. Wow. You know? So I think there's a lot of questions that need to be really considered, such as that. These benefits may benefit some people that can reinvest that money into the community, but what does that matter if none of us can spend the money to live in the community? It's ridiculous. I think that if we continue in this fashion where we just gaslight most of the public into saying that this is good for us without being completely transparent through vetted questions and whatnot, it just erodes trust. It's not acceptable to me. I wish I had more prepared data sets and everything else, but normal people are expected to become experts in the face of corporations that have these people to provide them talking points. Because we're told that we are being presented with facts today, but those are talking points. These are practiced, rehearsed responses. So we still don't have the trust that this is gonna go the way that we're being told. And even if it does, it still isn't provably beneficial to the majority of us, the 100,000 some odd people that live in the area. That's all I have.
Rebecca Ridge. Rebecca Ridge.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Ridge, and I live in District 5. Good evening, City Council members. I was born and raised here, as was my mother. My grandfather was the mayor in the 50s. He brought water to San Angelo. He was responsible for building O.C. Fisher. It used to be called the Bryant Reservoir. I'm sorry, thanks. Okay. Water is life. Without it, nothing else matters. Data centers threaten that life. They consume enormous amounts of water and energy. If our water is gone or contaminated, no project, no revenue can save us. We cannot trade our future for short-term gains. Do not be blinded by crazy promises of money. State tax abatements for these centers shift the burden to us. The promised revenue means nothing if water is gone or our quality of life is negatively impacted. City services cannot help a community without water. Clean water comes first, always. Just yesterday, there was a fatality in Abilene from one of the data center construction gravel trucks. And another example, Abilene hired 1,200 workers. Guess how many were local? 34. San Angelo deserves smarter solutions. We have bright, creative people. We need to come together to find solutions to help the city with funding needs while protecting our resources. For the ordinance, the proposed setbacks are too small. 200 feet in residential areas is not enough. It's tight. 50 feet in the county is worse. Our neighborhoods will bear the risk. Worst case, when things go south, owners behind shell corporations will walk away and leave us with no recompense via bankruptcies. Pause any action on data centers for a year. Do not rush us. Let us find options. Make this ordinance stronger. Protect our water, protect our future. Mr. Mayor, please remember your job is to represent the people, not the data centers. City Council members should not sign non-disclosure agreements. You represent us. Stop selling our city down the river. I sincerely believe this is going to be used for AI data warfare. For warfare, period. That's the popular topic now. That's why there's such a press. I think it's done. Thanks.
Glenda Bacon.
I'm Glenda Bacon, and I live out in the county. I don't live in the city, but I did attend the Dove Creek, and my heart is for the county because I have people out there with no water, having it hauled in and everything like that. Water's always been a problem, not just in the county, but in the San Angelo area. You see that because you're only limited to two days to water and everything. So it's always been a concern. It's a concern. I grew up in Andrews, Texas, West Texas. I think Andrews could do it because they have a lot of water, or they used to have a lot of water. But I want to thank Skybox. Thank you for your presentation, because the presentation out at Dove Creek the other night, they did not know their stuff at all. So it was a disaster out there. Thank you, City Councilman. Yes, I am married to an elected official, and I understand where you come from. You have hard decisions to make and everything else like that. I'm just sharing my heart because I was in Abilene. It's a disaster over there. It's a total disaster. Our son lives over there. People are suffering over there because of the data center. I went out to the data center. It is disaster. The lady was talking about the trucks, the fatalities, and stuff like that. I just would like to see our city council, your city council, because I don't vote for these people, but I know these people and I respect every one of you because I know you on a personal basis. But I would like for you to take a step back, consider everything that you've heard here tonight. There's a lot of pros, there's a lot of cons. I'm afraid you may not be hearing a lot of the cons, but if people don't realize, they put a halt on 50% of these data centers right now. I don't know if y'all have heard that, But 50% of the data centers, which would probably include San Angelo, there's a 50% because they cannot get parts. Another thing, our governor has taken a lot of money, $500,000 from Black something, Skybox probably knows it. But if you go into our Governor Abbott and look at his financials and all the money he has taken from data centers, it's pathetic. I'm sorry. All of the cities are being buffaloed by Governor Abbott, and I'm sorry, but that's what's happened. There's 444 data centers already in the state of Texas. We don't need any more.
Nancy Treadwell.
Good evening, I'm Nancy Treadwell. I'm in District 6. Remember the chameleon? He was a well-bred chameleon, and nothing could be brought against his record. As a chameleon, he had done the things he should have done and left undone the things that should have been left undone. He was a first-class, unimpeachable chameleon, and nobody had anything on him. But he came to a Scotch plaid and tried to cross it. In order to cross it, he had to imitate 6 different yarn colors. First one, and then another, and back to the first or second. He was a brave chameleon and died at the crossroads, true to his chameleon instincts. What kind of liar are you? People lie because they don't remember clearly what they saw. People lie because they can't help making a story better than it was the way it happened. People tell white lies so as to be decent to others. People lie in a pinch, hating to do it, but lying on because it might be worse. And people lie just to be liars for a crooked, personal gain. What sort of a liar are you? Which of these liars are you? This was written by Carl Sandburg in The People, Yes, 1936. Which brings me to my questions. The zoning you're talking about isn't in place, yet it sounds as if you already have a deal going. In West Texas, a person's word is his bond, and verbal contracts count. So how binding is what you have said tonight? Is it legally binding? In addition, the funds are going into the very best ISD, correct? SAISD will get no funds from the center, so why are you saying it will? And why have you had us sitting back here listening to a back and forth conversation with no facts and not inviting us to join? Thank you.
Riley Rodriguez.
How y'all doing? My name's Riley Rodriguez. I'm actually from Abilene. I am one of the data centers are what actually got me to run for a political office, and I've been going around the counties trying to let everybody know exactly what you're going to get to see. Not 6 months down the road, not a couple speculation reports, not in 6 years, when they get here. I could give you a big speech, but I'm just going to tell you a small story. This Saturday, we had a woman from the BCFS come in and speak to us about some of the issues we're facing in our district. She works with families, she works with people who have struggled with drug addiction, lost their kids. She helps them get back on their feet, get their lives back right, okay? That morning, she was late because she had to handle a case in which a single mother who is trying to recover from drug addiction needed to get a hotel room because her rent went up, and if she didn't pay it, she was going to be evicted. We have families showing up at our family helping hand centers that haven't been there in decades. It's not It's not an abstract thought. It's not something that might happen. Oh, maybe it'll happen. This is what we are seeing in our town. We have 134,000 people. We dwarf San Angelo when it comes to that, and we don't have the housing. We don't have the housing. Go look on Zillow right now. You can find a wonderful one-bedroom apartment at the back of somebody's house for $1,000 a month. And you better believe that them bills ain't going to be paid as part of that. That's what's happening in our district. Another thing we're seeing, people are losing their houses. When people get desperate, they start making decisions they otherwise wouldn't make. I volunteer and I help out with Beyond Trafficking. Guess what we're seeing? More trafficking, sex trafficking, labor trafficking. More of it has come to our city, and it is because people are getting kicked out of their houses and having to live on the street. There are much more sinister, dark things that are afoot than even water and energy, guys. I'm telling you right now. I've been fighting it for 2 years. Our city council cut deals at 8 o'clock in the morning with 2 hours notice to the community and all signed NDAs. You can't get a word out of them other than this is going to be great for us. Let me tell you another thing. They've cut that deal in Sweetwater. One of the fellows brought it up a minute ago. That's a great point, man. We're getting ate up with workers right now. We're going to get ate up with workers from Sweetwater. We're getting ate up with workers from Haskell. We're going to get ate up with workers from Albany. And guess what? When we run out of hotel rooms, I worked in the oil field, I'll drive 3 hours to make some money. So it doesn't stop, okay? The scale might be fine. Hey, whatever. It is widespread, and it is a 90-minute drive. Think about it.
Vernon Hegler.
I'm Vernon Hagler. I live off of Armstrong. Heather heard I have a proposal. I think the city should send a team of at least 3 people to go to a facility that operates as the one they've described to verify all the physical operation. I propose a panel of at least 3 people. I would think probably somebody from the water department who has hands-on experience and knows all the paperwork involved that a facility like this would have to turn into the EPA. Then an engineer who doesn't have any ties really to any of the governments to observe and report on things. And then a Joe Blow who has industrial experience that knows about cooling towers and this sort of thing, who can go in, is not going to be blown away by something they haven't seen, who can verify, with the fellow reading the water reports and so forth. I understood the gentleman in the dark coat talking about the different sort of heat exchangers and so forth. I understood what he was talking about. I think there's been so much information put out there that nobody knows what to believe to a large extent. And I think if we send a panel, got some real information from people's neighbors, it'd come back and say, well, we went and saw. As far as the physical parameters, what they're talking about is on the level. It's not going to affect our water future and so forth. I've lived here for over 40 years. I drive downtown and I see the old signs from when this was the wool capital of the world. Now we just barely have enough to talk about. I've seen our one various government or another, this city has gotten shortchanged. Do not envy y'all people having to try to deal with making this decision. It's a big decision, but somehow I've seen us turn away projects that would have been good for the city. And I think there should be some expert to try to clear away all the smog and get down to some sort of real information that everybody could, the council could make a judgment on, and that the citizens could feel about what happens. Thank you.
Shelby Storm.
My name is Shelby Sturm. I am a county resident. I own a property in San Angelo. I apologize, I'm not familiar with what district number that is. I'm here today as a farm wife, raising a fourth-generation farmer, which is probably the youngest citizen of San Angelo in this room, and I'm proud that he is taking part of this process. We all know that data centers require an immense amount of water for cooling. Water tables will lower regardless of what is promised to us. That will affect irrigation of crops and strain local aquifers. Crops and citizens will also be impacted by what are called heat islands. We are concerned about chemical contamination from the cooling systems. We want concrete assurances, regulations, and independent regular testing, not corporate talking heads, not hopes and prayers, not passing the buck to the next regulatory authority. We have already had breaches of our so-called prohibited wastewater contaminants by Ethicon. We do not want to experience further exposures. Your so-called self-testing and reporting is what I think unacceptable. If the water is so similar to what you're pulling in as what you're putting back into our sewer and wastewater systems, then why don't you keep reusing it? We've already seen real-time reports of the impacts caused by high power demands and infrastructure of AI data centers, driving up electricity rates of surrounding residents and farmers. We oppose new power lines constructed through any farmland. What you intend to bring to our doorstep is noise and light pollution from warehouse-style facilities. Construction and traffic influx push down the throats of a quiet rural area. We have seen dangerous construction traffic already from the solar farm out in Neola. My daughter rides the school bus with some of these semis and other big vehicles and have had reports of near traffic accidents. We refuse to accept any proposal tied to by right approval. It is a dangerous precedent to set, giving a carte blanche approval for future expansion. We furthermore demand no tax abatement and agreements ever. Corporations must pay their fair share. I've had enough of corporate talk in my life to call bull when I hear it. Let me say, keep your greedy and gluttonous AI paws off our San Angelo.
David DeRusso. David DeRusso. Elena Luna.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and San Angelo residents. My name is Elena, resident of District 2, and I am here tonight to stand before you to respectfully ask for you to reconsider the proposed data center development currently under your consideration. You were not elected to simply approve development. You were elected to protect the city, resources, people, and its future, and that is exactly what is at stake here. Let's speak plainly for a moment. This project asks San Angelo to trade away its water, power, land, and finite local resources for the benefit of an industry that will give us very little back. Data centers consume enormous amounts of electricity, water, strain infrastructure, and in return produce minimal permanent jobs and limited long-term investment. And here, that reality matters more. San Angelo is built on land, agriculture, and our economy depends on ranchers, farmers, and the small businesses that support them. These are not just temporary industries, they are generational, and they all depend on one thing: reliable access to water. Every gallon used to cool a data center is a gallon that cannot sustain livestock, irrigate crops, or support the backbone of this community. This is not just a development decision, it is a resource allocation decision. So we have to ask, who are we prioritizing? Local producers who sustain our economy and identity, or an outside industry that brings high demand and low long-term return? Because once those resources are committed, you cannot easily take them back. The precedent you set here will determine who thrives in San Angelo and who gets pushed out. And too often these projects come with tax abatements and subsidies, meaning the people of the city are being asked to subsidize their own displacement. That is not an economic development. That is a failure of stewardship. This council has a duty to think long-term what happens during drought, what happens when agriculture is forced to compete with industrial scale consumption, and what happens when the industries that built this region can no longer afford to operate here. Our founders warned us about this. Thomas Jefferson believed that the strength of the nation came from land-based communities rooted in independence and sustainability, not dependence on outside interests. James Madison warned of powerful factions and Federalists hidden pursuing their own gain at the expense of the public good, and George Washington cautioned against the influences that do not share the long-term fate of the people. This warning applies here. A corporation can leave when conditions change. Our farmers, ranchers, and families cannot. So the question is not whether this project is modern. The question is whether it is loyal to this community. And is it loyal to our agricultural backbone? Is it loyal to responsible water use in a region where water is already scarce? Or is it loyal to the people who live here, not just today, but decades from now? If the answer is no, then your responsibility is clear. San Angelo is not for sale at the cost of its own sustainability. Our water is not expandable, and our agricultural foundation is not something to be traded away for short-term promises. I urge you, stand with this community, protect our resources, and reject this proposal. Thank you.
Jamal Schumpert.
Jamal Shumpert, SMD3. I'm not going to speak a lot about data centers, but it kind of reminds me of when I was studying in school about how they ran highways through certain communities. Now they're building data centers in communities like this. It gives me like a bad feeling that we don't have a chance unless we do something about it, like recall some people or maybe put in a petition to take some of that sales tax money away out of the ballot to address some of these harms they're not willing to address as a city council. But I'm gonna move forward because what I came here for is to advocate for the children and youth. They've been killing themselves quite often, hurting themselves in San Angelo, way more than what I'm used to here. I would like for the city council, since Tom talked about giving them a building for youth, to put some money towards paying for these children whose parents can't afford for them to go to these camps in the summer. So they can go to these camps in the summer when they're not in school, instead of thinking of bad ways to harm the community. They're gonna be at your houses at night or during the day, causing problems, making our police having to answer to these petty things instead of actually addressing real issues the city have. And another thing I came up here was to thank Mr. Keeley for talking about Carver and wanting to save Carver. That is huge. Believe it or not, quite a few black schools got burned, just like Mr. Dendle's. So I understand exactly where Mr. Dendle's coming from. I understand both sides of it. I'd like for you to keep pushing that, Mr. Keeley. And that's really all I had to say about the data centers. But I do have somewhat of a solution, but y'all gonna have to ask me. Thank you.
Edward Zabecki. Edward Zabecki. Karen McGinnis.
Good evening. My name is Karen McGinnis, and I don't know what district I live in. I just moved. but I am born and raised in San Angelo. And Mike and Chris, I want to tell you that I'm sorry that your industry has such a poor track record and such a lousy reputation. You may be the one shining example, the white knights within the industry. But you've already told us that you're going to build this and then you're going to lease it to somebody. You don't know who that somebody is, and neither do we. You've already told us that they'll refresh the equipment every 5 to 6 years, 3 to 6 years. So where does all that old equipment go? I mean, it's not just going to disappear. I have a lot of questions and very few answers. I'm old-fashioned. I still write checks. Yeah, on this move, I misplaced my checks, but I found them. I'm wondering if perhaps it's time for us to stop just looking to the end of our nose, our local government, our state government, our national government, and start thinking not just what's best for me, but what's best for my grandchild. And more importantly, what about my grandchild's grandchildren? If we could look 7 generations down the road, I think we might be making different kinds of decisions. The bottom line is you can put lipstick on a pig. You can wrap that pig in silk and satin, and you can even put diamond studs in his ears. But in the end, he's still a pig.
Karen Best.
It's okay. All right, girl. I'm a better writer than a public speaker, so forgive me. I heard everybody say what they're going to say, so I'm just going to riff here on what I saw tonight. Okay, first of all, thank you to the City Council members who are present and staff and the members of Skybox, the 2 gentlemen who addressed the group today. On community, gentlemen, when you at Skybox talk about community, you're talking about the big 5. You're not talking about any of us. When you talk about the schools, I'm sitting next to a school board member. Y'all haven't approached SAISD about anything. The monies that are going to Very Best will almost largely go back to the state of Texas when they collect it. It's not just the overage, okay? But what bothers me most isn't Skybox. You guys are doing a business. I'm in business for myself too. I get it, and that's fine. We're a commodity for you. We are not your community. Wait. We're your community. We're your community. You asked to put your signs in our yards. You came to our Republican women and Concho Valley Republican women groups. When you have Glenda Bacon standing up putting the governor in a box, you know things are bad, okay? But you're our community, and the first we get to hear about Skybox with Skybox is up here today as this is upon us. Not at we should have been on the conversation a year ago, and on the zoning changes to housing a year ago. A year ago, we should have been included. But tonight, the best optic we have of where this is at is that empty stage right now where you should be sitting answering our questions. Not huddled in a corner with Skybox saying we will not respond to any questions. Other than the library meeting that Mr. Keeley was brave enough to call, and citizens got to be as open and vocal as they wanted to be, and God bless you for that. That man spent 2 hours in the street with me last week talking about data centers. That man has represented the city of San Angelo better than anyone else around that table. We deserve that kind of that kind of openness. We deserve that kind of opportunity. I will lose staff in my office when they can't pay rent and I can't charge enough to somebody to come in to raise their pay to keep them because of the housing issues that the gentleman from Abilene brought. That's not conjecture, that's fact, because I just had to raise their salary to pay for rents now, today. Hers went up $300 a month because of taxes and insurance. That's not a future problem, that's a today problem. Thank you.
Michelle DeRusso. And finally, Joe Hyde. Amber Armendariz.
Good evening, council members and fellow residents. My name is Amber Armendariz and I live in District 6. I'm here to implore you place a definite moratorium on the construction of skybox data centers in the San Angelo city limits, its properties, and for you to encourage our fellow neighbors in Tom Green County and surrounding counties to vote against any such proposal. Yesterday morning, I spoke of Skybox's closed loop system and how their blowdown process will dump its toxic sludge and dangerous contaminants into our water sources. If you missed it, please go have a listen. Now I will explain the noise pollution. Have any of you been to one of these data centers and heard of what their low hum sounds really is? I assure you it's not a low hum at all. I have firsthand knowledge of what these data center sounds emit. During the time I lived near one of these data centers, I suffered from daily headaches and extreme discomfort. And every time I would fly back here for the weekend, my headaches would clear up and instantly feel at ease. I was on all sorts of medication for these chronic problems and couldn't figure out why. After moving back here officially, my chronic headaches no longer exist. I encourage each of you to go to one of these data centers and see what they're really like. Cooling systems and generators create a constant loud hum that can negatively impact the quality of life. Yesterday, Steve Elnelius from our Chamber of Commerce purposely spoke misleading words to paint a picture of what this data center is, and I'm here to give you a reality check of truth. And I quote, "A data center is basically the building full of computers that deliver information that we use every day. These data centers are not full of computers. They're full of servers. One rack mount server is approximately 7 feet high, 2 feet wide, and 4 feet deep, and emits a frequency of 60 hertz, which can be felt physically as a vibration and heard as a deep bass tone. On average, a data center will house 100,000 server racks, which is a frequency of 6 million hertz or 6 megahertz, a high-frequency ultrasound. This cannot be heard by humans, but can cause a heating, tissue vibration, and potential cavitation in tissues. This is 300 times higher than the limit of human hearing. The combined noise from fans, cooling systems, and servers are considered hazardous for long-term exposure. For instance, it causes confusion, nausea, and potential internal injuries. Nearby residents are exposed to infrasound that causes vertigo and nausea. That said, you made a unilateral decision behind closed doors and backdoor deals that affect all of San Angeloans. That will cause long-term physical harm. Just as you asked the residents of San Angelo to vote on the expansion of our Coliseum that directly affects our taxes, you are mandated to ask the residents of San Angelo for a vote that directly affects our water resources and our health. You do not own the land and water here. The people of San Angelo own this land and water. And I reiterate from yesterday, we are the stewards of the land and water, and you were voted to represent your community, and your community is progressively opposing data centers from being built here. I motion to require all of San Angeloans to place a vote for indefinite moratorium or opposition for the data center and full future data centers as well. Mini Wicani, it means water is life. I'm a Native American. I have history here. My family's from here. I grew up right down the road. And what you're doing to our land and our water is ridiculous. You should be ashamed of yourselves.
Joe Hyde.
My name is Joe Hyde. I run 2 businesses in town. I have San Angelo Live, which is the news organization, and I also have a little bar and a hotel called the ArcLight. In that ArcLight, I got a cook named TD, and I can't give him enough money right now for him to buy a reliable car to get to work. And when I see things like these data centers, which is a gigantic opportunity for this town, for this city, for this region, to make a lot of money for the guys working for us, I don't know why there's so much opposition to it. All it is a building full of servers. And regardless of what you want to say here, you already have a data center on Johnson Street. One entire floor of the GTE building is a data center, and it's full of ant meters. It's mining Bitcoin. And while it's mining Bitcoin, none of you got cancer. You have plenty of water. You have no noise. No one complains about noise on Johnson Street. 40,000 square feet of Bitcoin miners. All of you walking out here are nothing but a bunch of low IQ idiots. Yes, weirdos and losers.
Nothing like. So we are finished with public comment. Thank goodness. I need a motion to adjourn the meeting. Got a first from Joe. Got a second from Tommy Hebert. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed that want to stay? That motion closes to close the meeting 7-0.